Good morning, this is Paul from Chess Power. We're looking at the second part of the Knight Fork video tutorial. In the first part we looked at a position where White had a sacrifice of his queen to produce a Knight Fork, which won a pawn and the queen back and ended up in what seemed to be a fairly straightforward knight versus pawn endgame. It turns out it's not so simple after all, and we reached this position in the last tutorial, and I asked you if you could find any hidden resources for White other than knight h2. The problem with knight h2 is after that move, Black can play king e5, and it's not easy for White to make progress now because the king can just come across to d5 and c4 and quite simply win the a-pawn, and both the knight and king are tied down to defending against these black pawns. So knight h2 is no good. So if any of you had a really good look, hopefully you found this amazing move, knight d2. The great thing about knight d2 is after h2 it looks like White's lost because you can't seem to stop the pawn becoming a queen, but White can simply play knight takes e4. So if Black promotes to a queen, we have knight g3 check. Nice fork, winning the queen back. And after the king moves, we just take the queen, and king comes here, and we just keep the king out and queen our pawn with the help of the king. So, knight d2 looks like the move that wins, but Black also has a really tricky move, and I want to see if you can pause the video and find the move for Black and have a think about whether it draws or whether it loses still for Black. Okay, after looking at this position, you need to know that pawns don't necessarily need to promote to a queen, so Black has a great move here. Pawn promotes to a knight, and that stops the knight fork, and now it looks even, knight and pawn versus knight and pawn. It turns out White is still winning, and I want you to have a think about why. Just pause the video again. Think about why White might be winning this endgame and how you would win. Okay, if you've paused the video, that's great. I'm glad you're really working through this and having a good think. Alright, the reason why White's winning is this knight is trapped in the corner of the board, and so White can win easily by playing king f3. Black plays h5, perhaps to try and put pressure on queen the h-pawn, and then White can move his knight so that the king is free now to come to g2 and win the knight. And king e5, king g2, and the knight is lost. Now it turns out that the king cannot win both the knight and pawn. The reason for this is something which perhaps I'll show you later, but essentially all the knight does is it protects the pawn from behind, and the king cannot take the knight because the pawn will queen, and so the knight just protects the pawn and the pawn can't be touched, and so the king will snaffle up the h-pawn and then come across and help the knight and pawn queen. Okay, so that was what happens after king c2. Now I want to show you one more line where at the very beginning Black can play king f6, and then the knight comes to c6, and Black can play e5. What a great move this is. e5 again keeps with the theme of stopping the knight coming back to stop the pawn. It looks like it's almost impossible for the white knight to get to the h-pawn now. It might have to come to knight b4 and then maybe c2 and then come across that way. It turns out white has a really tricky move. He can play, if you're advanced, pause the video now and see if you can work it out if you're an advanced chess player, because it will be not easy to find. So pause the video now and see if you can work it out. If you're just learning chess, keep on playing, because you won't probably find this move. The move's a4, and after a4, black can play h5, and then white plays a5, black plays h4, and you sort of got to wonder what white's up to, because white isn't going to win this race, because black's pawn is going to queen with check. So black plays h6, white plays h3, black plays h7, white plays h2. Yes, white queens first, but then black queens with check. And that's probably going to be a draw, simply because black's got a queen on the board and the king's very exposed. So let's keep on going a little bit further. Now, white has a really tricky move now. It is very surprising and not easy to find. But white can actually win this game with quite a simple resource. So pause the tape now and see if you can find out the answer. Okay, if you've had a good look at it, what can white do? Well, it seems like the only natural move is to play a7, because this pawn is unstoppable. But then black's going to have at least a draw probably. But white has this move. Knight takes e5. Really interesting. So now if the pawn goes to h2, white can play a fork. Knight g4 check, and the pawn is lost. Not only that, the king cannot get back to stop the a pawn either. So if the king approaches the a pawn, take the pawn, and then we play a7 and the queen is there. So after knight takes e5, black cannot play h2, but well, why can't it just take the knight? And this shows the second point of white's knight sacrifice. He can play a7, h2, a8 queen. And now the queen stops the h pawn, and white has won the game. So there it is. Thank you very much for watching our knight fork tutorial. Hopefully it's combined some tactics with some endgame technique for you, and you've learnt a lot from it. We will be posting more videos online. This is actually our first video, so we'll be learning how to do this a bit better, and hopefully give you lots more resources. If you'd like to learn more about who we are and what we do, visit chesspower.co.nz, and thanks for watching.